Shalom, Israel. Welcome to another biblical history lesson. My name is Shamar to my left.
Wash.
Brother Ashna Pash, my 10 tribe brother. We are going to be going over tonight the Hasmonean Dynasty, specifically, dealing with the Maccabee family. We're going to start it off. Let's read that article. That's why we're going to start.
Who were the Hasmoneans? It says Hasmonean was the family name of the rebel leader and priest Mattathias, who began to throw off Seleucid rule. Upon his death, his sons continued the rebellion and were eventually successful in gaining Jewish autonomy under the Seleucids, and then with disintegration of the Seleucid Empire, full Jewish independence. Simon, brother of Judah, Maccabees, and son of Mattathias, was the first Hasmonean ruler of an autonomous state. The Hasmoneans are also called Hasmoneans. The name Hasmonean comes from the Hebrew word kashman, wealthy. According to Josephus, a priest named Kashma from the family of Jehoram, 1 Chronicles 24:7, was the ancestor of the Hasmoneans. Their history is found in the works of Josephus and the apocryphal books of 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Under Hasmonean rule, the kingdom expanded its borders, covering an area almost as large as the nation had under King Solomon. John Hyrcanus captured Transjordan.
Drop down to that last paragraph. We're going to really, it was, for one, as a preface, before we really dive into it, this is a lot of history. I would recommend going and reading 1st and 2nd Maccabees on your own when you have the time, as well as researching the Hasmonean dynasty as far as the dates, the maps, the era, the battles, all those things. I would recommend searching out on your own when you have the time. We apologize for the starting late. We did have some technical difficulties. But even with the full time, it's quite a bit of information to try to compile. So we're just going to hit the highlights between 1st and 2nd Maccabees, as far as some of the highlights of the battles, the events, things that shaped history of our nation, so to speak. Go ahead.
In 63 BC, Judah, as the Jewish state was then called, was conquered by the Roman Republic. The Idumean Herod the Great was installed by Rome as king, and he tried to make his rule seem legitimate in the eyes of the Jewish people by marrying Mariam, a Hasmonean princess. Herod, always paranoid, executed all possible rivals to the throne from the Hasmonean line. He executed his two sons through Mariam and drowned Aristobulus III, Mariam's brother, whom he had made high priest at her insistence. He eventually executed Miriam as well.
So that's actually an account that's in the scriptures, but again, we're going to be summing up a lot of these events. That's from an article specifically. Let's jump over to...
You wanted the last part? Actually, that was second.
Yeah.
The Hasmoneans were renowned for their leadership and skill in warfare. They providentially came to power during a dark time of Israel's history. The Hasmoneans fought off Hellenizing influences and paganism, defeated the evil Antiochus Epiphanes, secured Israel's independence from the Seleucids, rededicated the temple to the worship of the Most High, and at least temporarily restored the glory of Israel as a nation.
So give me 1st Maccabees 2 and start at 1. Let me get that article real quick. 1st Maccabees 2 and 1. We're just going to give the names, and then we're going to start at 1 and 1. So as he was saying, they were renowned for their leadership, their abilities in warfare. 1st and 2nd Maccabees are full of wars and battles, a lot of the great works in which the Maccabees, started with Mattathias down to his sons, had actually done in the name of the Most High in Israel. 1st Maccabees 2 and 1.
Book of 1st Maccabees 2, verse 1. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Joram, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons.
So these are Mattathias' 5 sons. Go ahead.
Johanan, called Caddis, Simon, called Thassi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Averon, and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphis.
So those are the actual names of the Maccabees themselves. So we're going to get a brief history because one thing that got mentioned earlier, jump over to 1 and 1, was the Hellenization, right? So that was a time period and a specific practice that was being carried out by the Greeks to basically the goal was assimilation of other cultures into their own. Go ahead.
First Maccabees 1, verse 1. And it happened, after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece.
That was about 331 BC. Go ahead.
And made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him.
So, you know what? We're going to just drop down to verse 11. We're going to try to speed through this. Go ahead.
In those days went there out of Israel wicked men,
Uh-huh.
who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are around about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow.
So basically, there was a Hellenization, right? So after Alexander the Great, what happened during the first scriptures in which we had to go over, around 331 BC, when that era was taking place, he died around 323 BC, and his kingdom was split into 4 parts to Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. And then in those days, there were wicked men that came out of Israel saying, okay, well, we need to join ourselves to these heathen because we don't have the same resources, the same citizenship, the same rights, etc., because we've departed from them. Go ahead.
So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen.
So they built a gymnasium. The etymology of the word, or the definition of the word, is literally to exercise naked. So even when you go into the gym, you see everybody's wearing skimpy clothes and very tight clothing, revealing clothing, spaghetti strap tank tops, all that kind of stuff. That comes from the Greeks. Read on.
And made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, and he might have dominion of the two realms.
Drop down to 21.
Verse 21. And entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar, and the candlestick of light, and all of the vessels thereof.
So Antiochus went into Jerusalem, and Antiochus went into Jerusalem, and he specifically went into the altar. And the scriptures say that a lot of the nations that were going in, it said that they were going in for spoil. Israel was notoriously wealthy, notoriously successful, and specifically the altar, which was known for its gold. Go ahead.
And the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crowns of the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold, and precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasure which he found. And when he had taken all away...
Drop down to 29. I'm sorry, go ahead, drop down to 29.
Verse 29. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit.
So when he speaketh fair, believe him not, because there are 7 abominations in his heart. Go ahead.
For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed the people of Israel. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side.
So this is a lot of what was happening: the Hellenization, the attacks, the battles. It wasn't just always, because like one thing to think about modern day, I think America is the only landmass that has not had a war fought on its specific soil from a foreign entity. So So they were literally going to Jerusalem, going into the city, and it was right here at home. You walk outside, there's war, there's battle, there's fires. All those things were happening in our city. So that's why it became so pertinent for the Maccabees to rise up and fight, because Israel needed a deliverer, or we needed someone to fight for us. We needed someone to join us. Drop down to 37.
37. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it, insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. Whereupon the city was made an inhabitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt.
So like I said, dive deeper into this history, the Hellenization period, and the Hellenizing of the Jews, the diaspora, which it leads into, all those things that were happening to Israel during this time. Keep reading.
Verse 40. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandments of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath.
So everything that was happening within Israel, or everything that Antiochus was writing, it was always joining everyone as, the human race, all one, all this other kind of stuff. So a lot of the Israelites turned, and unfortunately, when you see a lot of consistencies in certain time periods. Like, for example, during the times of, Joshua, it kept saying that there were no judges in Israel. That book of Joshua, that was Joshua and Judges. So during this time, there was Antiochus constantly writing. There were a lot of Israelites that were betraying their own, back to back. You see a whole lot of Israel. There was a big divide between righteous and wicked. You see those that were wicked, that joined themselves unto the heathen, profaned the Sabbath, gladly offered sacrifices of abominations, or broke the laws of the Most High. And then you saw people like Eleazar and Razis and the Maccabees that were willing to die if, when they were called upon for the laws of the Most High for the people. Read on.
For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days.
So he was trying to get them to go, he was trying to get us to go against all of our customs and all the things that were required of us through the laws of the Most High. Go ahead.
And polluted the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrificed swine's flesh and unclean beasts.
One of the pages.
that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanliness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances.
So that was what was happening. Like I said, it was an assimilation. They wanted us to become like the Greeks. Being Edomites, obviously, they had some really disgusting, just disgusting practices. Sacrificing of swine's flesh, everything that was against the Most High. Don't offer a sacrifice, and if you do, unclean animals, all these other things after their customs. Drop down to chapter 2, go to verse 10.
Chapter 2, verse 10. One nation hath not had a part in her kingdom, and gotten of her spoils.
So all these nations were coming against Israel, like I said earlier, because of the wealth of Israel, and at some point because of the rebelliousness of Israel, because there were a lot that didn't consent to the king's religion unto the Hellenization. Drop down to 15.
15. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Moden to make them sacrifice.
So they said, we need to make sure you guys are doing what we told you. Go ahead.
And when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. They answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthen his sons, and strengthen with sons and brethren. Now therefore, come thou first, and fulfill the king's commandments, like as all the heathen have done. Yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards.
So they saw the biggest, baddest dude. They was like, hey, you the one, you know, obviously you're a strong man. You have a lot of sons, a lot of brethren. They say that we know, it's the same way that Esau uses Israelites today. You know, they have the coons come out and try to lull the people back to sleep. They try to influence the people. They try to do the same thing with Mattathias. They said, well, you're a powerful figure. You have notoriety. If you offer the sacrifices, everybody else is going to follow after you. So we want you to come and you start it off. You be the first one to do it because we know that it's going to have an influence on your people, and everyone else is going to follow after that custom, because if we can get you to break, we'll get anybody to break. Go ahead.
Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers.
So he said it loud enough for everybody to hear him. He said, yeah, I understand there's a whole lot of people that sold out, that gave in. He said, but me, my brother, we're not doing that. Me and my kids, my brethren, we're not doing what the king commanded us, but we'll die in this covenant. Go ahead.
God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left.
And it's crazy because a lot of times in the scriptures, when they knew they was coming up to a certain caliber of Israelite, they already knew that death wasn't necessarily going to be what tempted them. Death wasn't going to be what influenced someone to do or not do something, but oftentimes they tried to offer gifts instead. They said, okay, instead of threatening him, we know he's not going to respond well to that. We'll try to appease him. We'll give you gifts. You'll be the king's friend. You'll be this. You'll be that. Mattathias said, man, the hell with the gifts, and do what you got to do. But he said, we're not doing this, but read on.
Now, when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Moden, according to the king's commandment.
So there was still that coon. There was still that Jake that was like, hey, well, he giving what? He offering what? I'll do it. Go ahead.
Which thing, when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar.
So he was so pissed off, he said, I can't think. He said, I can't believe this nigga about to do this. On the Most High's altar, I can't believe he doing this. So he ran up and he killed him. It was that simple. No talking, no, what are you doing, Ak? It was boom. He's dead, you know?
Also, the king's commissioners who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time. And the altar he pulled down.
So he said, I'm going to kill the man that was willing, the man that came here to talk to us about it, and I'm going to pull the altar down so ain't nobody going to be doing it after I leave. Just real quick, that excerpt from Antiquities of the Jews. That is book 12, chapter 6, paragraph 2. So this is also Flavius Josephus, a Israelite historian who wrote of quite a few of the accounts that were happening to the Israelites at that time. This particular account is actually mentioned, which also proves the validity of the Bible and the validity of the stories. I just wanted to bring that out briefly to show this history as well was recorded, not just in the scriptures. Go ahead.
It says, but when those that were appointed by the king were come to Moden, that they might compel the Jews to do what they were commanded, and to enjoining those that were there to offer sacrifice as the king had commanded, they desired that Mattathias, a person of the greatest character among them, both on other accounts and particularly on account of such a numerous and so deserving a family of children, would begin the sacrifice.
So we wanted him to begin the sacrifice. Go ahead.
Because his fellow citizens would follow his example, and because such a procedure would make him honored by the king.
So basically, it was a form of buck breaking. Like I said, they took the biggest and the strongest, and inside of all the people, they're like, if we can get him to compromise, everyone who's looking at him, knowing that he's a great man, knowing the character and the reputation that he has, they're gonna measure themselves up, and they're like, well, shit, if he broke, then what chance do I have? They already knew that. Psychological warfare. Go ahead.
But Mattathias said that he would not do it, and that if all the other nations would obey the commandments of Antiochus, either out of fear or to please him, yet would not he nor his sons leave the religious worship of their country. But as soon as he had ended his speech, there came one of the Jews into the midst of them and sacrificed as Antiochus had commanded. And at which Mattathias had great indignation and ran upon him violently with his sons, who had swords with them, and slew both the man himself that sacrificed and Apelles, the king's general, who compelled them to sacrifice with a few of his soldiers. He also overthrew the idol altar and cried out, "If," said he, "anyone be zealous for the laws of his country and for the worship of the Most High, let him follow me." And when he had said this, he made haste into the desert with his sons, and left all his substance in the village. Many others did the same also, and fled with their children and wives into the desert and dwelt in caves. But when the king's generals heard this, they took all the forces they then had in the citadel at Jerusalem and pursued the Jews into the desert.
So they followed after him. So Mattathias is like, man, we're not going to stand for this. And there's no way with us being under this occupation, this rule from these kings, are we going to be able to uphold the law. So they decided to leave. They said, anybody that's serious about keeping the commandments, that's not going to go for this, follow me. And they went into the wilderness to escape the city and to escape the bounds of that king. Go over 2 Maccabees 2, just 27, because it's literally there a side-by-side comparison.
Verse 27, And Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, "Whosoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me." So he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that ever they had in the city.
You would think Josephus was copying the scriptures. It was literally the exact same thing that Josephus wrote is the same thing that's in the scriptures. Drop down to verse 32.
They pursued it after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day. And they said unto them, "Let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live."
So basically he was saying, okay, we had to follow you out here, but he was like, here's your last chance. Well, let go of the fact that you ran away and didn't do it the other day, but if you do it right now, we'll still let you live. Drop down to 36. Actually, keep reading from there. I'm sorry.
But they said, "We will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandments to profane the Sabbath day." So then they gave them the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they laid hid, but said, "Let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth shall testify for us that ye put us to death wrongfully." So they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 8,000 people.
So they ended up killing everybody. So at that time, their understanding was, he was like, well, damn, the Sabbath day is supposed to be a day of rest. We're not going to defile it by cooking. We shouldn't defile it by fighting. So they decided to lay there and literally allowed all of themselves to die, because in their understanding, they felt as if they shouldn't be fighting on the Sabbath. That's the level of devotion that those that were truly keeping the commandments had amongst those that were righteous in Israel. Drop down to... Oh, actually, keep reading.
39.
Yeah.
Now when Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, If we all do as our brethren have done and fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen, they will not quickly root us out of the earth. At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him. Neither will we die all as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places.
They said there's no way we're going to be able to uphold this to this extent. He said if that's the case, obviously the heathen are just going to come against us only on Sabbath days, knowing that they're going to kill us, and there's nothing we can do to fight against them. Drop down to 45, I'm sorry.
Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars, and what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly.
So it wasn't just battle. They were doing every aspect. He said, man, there are children here who have not been circumcised. They went and circumcised them. Everything that they were a massive help in Israel during that time, not just an avenger of our enemies, but also upkeepers of the law. And that's why it was such a big thing for the heathen to come unto them and say, you do it first, because this would have been null and void. You know, if they would have caved, this literally all this history wouldn't have been written. So it's like, man, that goes to speak about the integrity, not only that we need to make sure that we have, but the integrity of these men at this time, and how great of a work that was to and for the children of Israel. Drop down to 49.
Now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, Now hath pride and rebuke God in strength, and the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation.
So Mattathias is getting old and he's talking to his sons. Drop down to verse 65.
65. And behold, I know that your brother Simeon is a man of counsel. Mm-hmm. Give ear unto him always. He shall be a father unto you. Mm-hmm. As for Judas Maccabees, he hath been mighty and strong even from his youth up. Let him be your captain and fight the battle of the people. Take also unto you all those that observe the law, and avenge ye the wrong of your people. Mm-hmm. Recompense fully the heathen, and take heed to the commandments of the law.
So Mattathias is speaking to his sons, and he initially told them, first he prophesied unto them in reference to scripture, saying, you guys have to trust in the Most High. And then he goes on to say, well, Simon is a man of counsel, he's a man of wisdom. Let him be basically, give ear unto him, listen to what he has to say. And he says, Judas, he's always been strong and powerful, he's a mighty man, he's going to be the general, he's going to be the one to lead the battles. We're going to get a little bit of Judas's account. Go to 2 Maccabees chapter 12, and then go to read verse 1 through 6, I'm sorry. Because we're going to show why Judas was chosen and some of the things that he did.
2 Maccabees 12, verse 1. When these covenants were made, Lysias went unto the king, and the Jews were about their husbandry.
So we was chilling. We was in our land. We were farmers, basically. Husbandry is more or less tilling the land. So we were at peace for what it's worth. Go ahead.
But of the governors of several places, Timotheus and Apollonius, the son of Genius, also Hieronymus and Dephon, and beside them Nicanor, the governor of Cyprus, would not suffer them to be quiet and live in peace.
So this is where that scripture applies. If it be possible, live at peace with all men. But it said they just saw something about them seeing the Israelites dwell in peace. Just didn't sit right with them. So what happened? Go ahead.
Then men of Job also did such an ungodly deed. They pray the Jews that dwell among them to go with their wives and children into the boats which they had prepared, as though they had meant them no hurt. Who accepted of it according to the common decree of the city, as being desirous to live in peace, and suspecting nothing. But when they were gone forth into the deep, they drowned no less than 200 of them.
So basically the heathen were also doing those things. They convinced 200 men, women, and children to go onto these boats. It said the Jakes just wanted to live in peace. Say, all right, if this is what it takes, this is what I want. But that's why in First Ezra, I think it's 8 and 84, it says you shall not seek peace with them. So many times our people were mistreated, killed, slaughtered, etc., because they consistently sought peace. You know,
When Judas heard of this cruelty done unto his countrymen, he commanded those that were with him to make them ready. And calling upon the Most High, the righteous judge, he came against those murderers of his brethren and burnt the heaven by night.
so it said it was so many. He lit up the night with how many of those people that he burned in the boats and all the destruction that he brought upon the men of Job for what they had done to the children of Israel. Go ahead.
And burnt the haven by night, and set the boats on fire, and those that fled thither he slew. And when the town was shut up, he went,
I'm sorry, drop down to 14.
verse 14. But they that were within it put such trust in the strength of the walls and provisions of victuals that they behaved themselves rudely toward them that were with Judas, railing and blaspheming and uttering such words as were to not be spoken. Wherefore Judas with his company, calling upon the great Lord of the world, who without any rams or engines of war did cast down Jericho in the time of Joshua, gave a fierce assault against the walls, and took the city by the will of the Most High, and made unspeakable slaughter, insomuch that a lake 2 furlongs broad, near adjoining thereunto, being filled full, was seen running with blood.
So it said he did an unspeakable slaughter. So that's why I said even this is an abridged version. There's a specific chapter, I want to say it's 2 Maccabees 2, where he specifically says that this is all abridged. So all the battles that they did, all the people that they killed, all the cities that they seized, even this is an abridged version of all the things that the Maccabees were doing in the name of the Most High and for the sake of the children of Israel. Jump over to verse 22.
22. But when Judas his first band came in sight, the enemies being smitten with fear and terror through the appearing of him that seeth all things, fled amain, one running this way, another that way, so as that they were often heard of their own men.
So it said when Judas came up upon them, they were so scared that they were running, scattering it to where they were running into each other and hurting each other. Go ahead.
And wounded with the points of their own swords. Judas also was very earnest in pursuing them, killing those wicked wretches, of whom he slew about 30,000 men.
30,000 with a sword. I mean, we talking about a captain, like when Mattathias said, like Mattathias knew his son. So he's like, man, I know, who knows how the other sons would have acted. But it says they were already scattered and running into each other, hurting each other. But Judas was like, nah, we still got to follow and kill all of them. 30,000. That's with a sword. It ain't bullets where it's just banging, it's done. I gotta
Put in that work.
I gotta pull it out. So that was an incredible feat. There were so many, like I said, innumerable slaughters that were done just during this time period, which wasn't very long of a time period, by Judas, Mattathias, and the other sons of the Maccabees. Go back to actually, stay in 2 Maccabees, go to 14. 10.
2 Maccabees 14, verse 10. For as long as Judas liveth, it is not possible that the state should be quiet.
So basically, well, like I said, we're going to jump around some of the history. I wanted to specifically highlight one of the reasons or some of the things that Judas had done right after he was named to show why his father had done that. But Judas had he gave the heathen tail. He was engaging in battle, led many of the men of Israel. He was a hell of a leader. So they came to this king and they were saying, man, as long as Judas is alive, there's no way that they're just going to lie down and take whatever it is, whatever customs that we deliver unto them. They're going to keep rebelling against us because Judas. Go ahead.
This was no sooner spoken of him, but others of the king's friends, being maliciously set against Judas, did more incense Demetrius.
So they were trying to convince him because they wanted them to be able to send more forces and put more effort into killing Judas and conquering Israel. Go ahead.
And forthwith calling Nicanor, who had been master of the elephants and making him governor over Judea, he sent him forth.
So Nicanor was also a great enemy in Israel. I actually did a lesson, I believe that is on 60 the script, called The Destruction of Nicanor, and it goes into detail his life and his dealing with the Israelites. Go ahead.
And to scatter them that were with him, and to make Alcemius high priest of the great temple. Then the heathen that had fled out of Judea from Judas came to Nicanor by flocks, thinking the harms and calamities of the Jews to be their welfare.
So then that's another thing. So a lot of times, like, we try to look at specific crimes or specific peoples, and we try not to judge all the heathen, or we don't truly understand the gravity that all of the heathen are against us. And, you know, the scriptures in Matthew 24, it says, "You shall be hated of all men for my name's sake." You know, we always look at that like, oh, it's going to be a specific time. It's going to be a specific look. We're hated. Said all the heathen, once they heard, like, hey, I'm trying to go up against these Jews. Oh, you trying to get them Jews too? It was nothing for them to come and try to join themselves unto Nicanor, offer their men, their armies, their armor, their resources to try and go and conquer Israel. We're hated for all men for the Most High's namesake. Was that 14? Okay, go ahead, finish that.
15. Now when the Jews heard of Nicanor's coming, and that the heathen were up against him, they cast earth upon their heads and made supplication to him that had established his people forever.
So they called upon the Most High. We're gonna get to jump over to 1 Maccabees chapter 4, verse 6.
First Maccabees 4 and verse 6. But as soon as it was day, Judas showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds.
So I said they weren't thinking about their army and their swords. They were knowing that they had the Most High. Go ahead.
And they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed, and compassed round about with horsemen. And these were expert of war. Then said Judas to the men that were with him, Fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid of their assault. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now therefore let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure the Lord will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face this day.
So Judas also, that's another thing. Judas knew the scriptures, because mind you, they were priests. These were Levites. They knew the law. So oftentimes you'll see that Judas was quoting the law, the stories, the prophecies, all these things unto the men that were with him. He said, it said that they didn't have neither swords nor armor to their minds. That could also mean that they weren't very trained, because the very next scripture says that the other men were experts of war. So, he's just saying anybody that's willing to fight. It doesn't take much, because most people don't want to die. So he took these men that simply did not want to die into battle against this massive multitude that have been trained up from their youth in war, trained up from their youth in tactics and warfare and fighting. And he's like, yeah, but don't worry about it, because at the end of the day, we're relying on the Most High. We're the Most High's children, and as long as we're keeping this covenant to pray unto the Most High that he'll save us from this. Drop down to 28.
Verse 28. The next year, therefore, following Lysias gathered together 70,000 choice men of foot and 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them.
So he came against Israel with 65,000 troops, 5,000 being on horseback and 60,000 on foot. Go ahead.
So they came unto Idumea and pitched their tents at Bethsura. And Judas met them with 10,000 men.
So 10,000 versus 65,000, 6-to-1 odds. That's enough, because the crazy part about it, I don't know if anyone else reasons within themselves, but I often think like, man, when do you run? When do you fold? Or when do you run and when do you fight? And so many times Judas was going against impossible odds. Things that would make you say, like, oh, no, there's no way we're going to win this. And oftentimes his men did get discouraged, or they did flee and scatter themselves, because there's no way we're going to win this. And the Most High, as long as they were righteous, he delivered them. Go ahead. Actually, I'm sorry. Uh, drop down to 35.
Verse 35. Now, when Lysias saw the army put to flight and the manliness of Judah's soldiers and how they were ready either to live or die valiantly,
So they was ready. They was like, whether we make it out of this or whether we die from this, we going into battle. Go ahead.
he went into Antiochia and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again into Judah.
So
or
he
Judea.
gathered even more men than he had the first time because he ended up seeing that that he lost this battle. So he lost this battle, went and gathered, where he could, a little bit here, a little bit there of the strangers, which are the heathens in the other nations. And then he said, okay, I got to go back at some point. Keep reading.
Then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary.
So they mind was still focused on the law, still focused on the Most High. Go ahead.
Upon this, all the host assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profane, and the gates burnt up, and shrubs growing in the courts as if in a forest or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priest's chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made great lamentation and cast ashes upon their heads.
So they were very distraught by this because obviously the heathen had done a lot of damage, and it's crazy because they typically, it's heathen, man. It's like this really gives you a glimpse into don't let Esau and that tying suit fool you. Don't let these other nations fool you. These people hate us, and the crazy part about it is, of all things, they always went after the temple. If they would have just took the gold, it's like, all right, you guys are just thieves. Gold is valuable, but it said they had to profane it. They tore it up. They destroyed it. They always did something against anything that Israel valued. Drop down. Drop down to 52.
Verse 52. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Caslu, in the 40th and 8th year, they rose up betimes in the morning.
Drop down to 55.
Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising praising the God of heaven, who had given them good success.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrifice, the sacrifice of deliverance and praise.
So this is what we get the Feast of Dedication from, the 8 days of dedicating the altar back to the Most High. And that just also brings another a thought to meditate on in our everyday lives and in our walk in this truth. There's a lot of like this whole Afrocentric woke movement that's going on. And I saw one that I did agree with in a sense of, or that I could understand, where it says, we are the new ancestors. So many times they call upon their ancestors and are trying to channel this energy, and we know that's not according to the Most High. But the reality is, the Feast of Dedication was of the acts and valiantness, particularly of this family, as far as the carnal aspect. Of course, we know it comes from the Most High, but these were the men, these were the actual men that made things move, that went into battles, that dedicated the temple, that orchestrated these wars and these events. And it just makes me think like, man, the things that we're doing even now at this time, who knows, we may not bring forth a new holy day, but these things are still being recorded, and these things are still written aforetime for the learning of the next generations, however long this world may last, for them to look at our works and to be reinstilled within their faith and refocus within their faith to continue on within this fight, looking at our tribulations and having those to strengthen themselves. Let me see. That's the Feast of Dedication. Drop down, chapter 5. Let's get 50.
First Maccabees 5, verse 50. So the soldiers pitched and assaulted the city all the day and all the night, till at the length the city was delivered into his hands, who then slew all the males with the edge of the sword, and razed the city, and took the spoils thereof, and passed through the city over them that were slain.
I'm down to 55.
Now what time as Judas and Jonathan were in the land of Galilee, and Simon his brother in Galilee, before Ptolemaeus, Joseph the son of Zacharias and Azarias, captains of the garrisons, heard of the valiant acts and warlike deeds which they had done. Wherefore they said, let us also get us a name, and go fight against the heathen that are round about us.
So they heard of all the acts that were happening. They heard of the battles. They're like, man, y'all hear what they doing? Everybody talking about Judas. Everybody talking about Simon. Man, let us go do something so that our name could be, buzzing in the streets, ringing bells. Let's go do something like that. What they got going on? Drop down to 60. Actually, keep going. Read from there.
So when they had given charge unto the garrison that was with them, they went toward Jamnia.
So that old saying, you go looking for trouble, you're going to find it. They left to go find a battle to engage in, to have some kind of glorious victory and bring it back and tell their own story. Go ahead.
Then came Gorgias and his men out of the city to fight against them. Mm-hmm. And so it was that Joseph and Azarias were put to flight, and pursued unto the border of Judea. And there were slain that day of the people of Israel about 2,000 men.
2,000 men lost their lives because they was being foolish, they was being prideful, they was being self-absorbed. I mean, you have to think, like the scriptures say, there were so many points I wanted to bring out, I started to lose them. Like, you have to think about the whole culture that's going on right now, and it's just something that I touch on because even, all scripture is good for doctrine, for edification, for reproof. It makes me think about the culture that we have now, how so many Jakes are determined to build a name, and not in righteousness, because Judas and Mattathias and Simon the Maccabees, they had to have known that their name meant something. They had to have known that people was talking about them, but they was not going out into war specifically to be like, oh man, I want people to talk about me. I want people to remember me. I want to be called rabbi. I want this. Say, man, we doing this for our people, and above that, we doing this for the Most High. These men specifically were clout chasing. They were clout chasing. They wanted a name. They wanted some glory. It no longer became about the safety of Israel, their wives, their children, their brethren. It became about who can I be? How can I benefit? And when you look to start serving yourself, the scriptures tell you, lean not to your own understanding. They started to lean into what they wanted to do. And that's at a certain point it's idolatry, because they didn't receive this of the Lord. It was what they desired for themselves, and as a result they ended up getting killed. It's like, man, for all those currently that are chasing clout, that are chasing a name, not in righteousness, saying, I want my name written in the book of life, but doing things to be seen. Man, I'm about to cut this Jake up. I'm about to cut this Jake up on live. Let's debate. Let's do this. Let's do that. Look what we doing. These great works. I'm going to be the same ones in Matthew 7:21. Did not I do great works in thy name? Did not I cast out demons? Well, who'd you do it for? You did it for the glory of the Most High? Did you say all praise to the Most High? Let's put our enemies to flight. Or did you say, hey, they're going to be talking about us too? And that's the difference in the result. From that 10,000 to 60,000 battle to the 2,000 completely being slain versus who knows how many they went up against. But the Most High is not with them. But that's all that I'll touch pertaining to that subject. Go ahead and read on.
We're at
61. Mm-hmm.
Thus was there a great overthrow among the children of Israel, because they were not obedient unto Judas and his brethren, but thought to do some valiant act. Mm-hmm. Moreover, these men came not of the seed of those by whose hands deliverance was given unto Israel.
That's the deep part. That's the part that kind of rattled me. He said, you're not of the seed of the people that the Most High chose to bring deliverance to Israel. So there's so many things as far as like, oh, well, I'm not loyal unto any man. I don't move a certain way. I don't bow to a man. I know it's a lot of it's leaders recently that have come out and are now talking about how they don't follow a man and the order is not supposed to be set up that way. You can believe that if you want to. But I just don't see that in the scriptures. Yeah, it says cursed be the man that trusts in men. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but the Most High was loyal to many men. The Most High said Moses was a close friend. The Most High dealt with prophets and gave you the way to navigate because there were obviously people who are going to outrank you. There are obviously people that are going to be dealt with on a different level than you're going to get dealt with. There are obviously people who he's going to have mercy for that he ain't going to show that extend that same right unto you. I have mercy upon whom I have mercy. The Most High paints a very clear picture as to who he is and how he's going to deal with us as a nation, as the children of Israel. And so often do we make a mistake because we start thinking about what we desire and what we would like to do and not, you totally shut yourself off to what the Most High has intended for you or what the Most High is going to set you up for. Those 2,000 men could have fought many battles behind Judas. But because they wanted to be known amongst Judas and potentially surpass him, they died that day. That's the end of that legacy. So much for a name. Well, I guess they got it because honestly, we are reading their stories. So you still have a name in some sense, but it's not at all in what I know they intended to do. Drop down to verse 67.
67. In that time, certain priests, desirous to show their valor, were slain in battle, for that they went out to fight unadvisedly.
So there's other Jakes. They weren't the only ones. Jakes is trying all over the place, not using wisdom, not having counsel, not consulting with the Most High. I mean, pick your poison. It's not like I know exactly what these Jakes were thinking of. But Jakes were going out trying to do things against the heathen, and it was like, this is not what you're meant to do, or this is not what you're called for. There were a lot of men that died seeking a name, chasing clout, looking for these rights and honors and rewards of men, and that were not trusting and relying and praying, consulting with the Most High. Drop down to chapter 6. Go to verse 18.
First Maccabees 6 and 18. About this time.
I'm sorry, actually, just drop down to 21.
21.
Mm.
Howbeit, certain of them that were besieged got forth, unto whom some ungodly men of Israel joined themselves.
So there go the sellouts again. It's so many times when you read that Israel was against Israel. So many times you see that Israelites were set up in positions of power and were against their own people. And you see that same stuff happening today. How Jakes and political figures and all these other people that are trying to come forth trying to come forth in the name of our oppressors, trying to lull us back to sleep, or being just against us. It be your own people. And it's crazy. Go ahead.
And they went unto the king and said, how long will it be ere thou execute judgment and avenge our brethren? Mm-hmm. We have been willing to serve thy father and to do as he would have us and to obey his commandments.
He said, man, how long you going to let him do this to us? He said, we was willing. We gave you everything we had. We sold out. Now you got to uphold your end of the bargain. Go ahead.
For which cause they of our nation beseech the tower and are alienated from us. Moreover, as many of us as they could light on the Salakia. As many of us as they could light on, they slew and spoil our inheritance. Neither have they stretched out their hand against us only, but also against all their borders.
So he said, not only are they fighting back, but they trying to get bigger. Stop them niggas. Go ahead.
And behold, this day are they besieging the tower of Jerusalem to take it. The sanctuary also of Bethsuras have they fortified. Mm-hmm. Wherefore, if thou dost not prevent them quickly, they will do greater things than these.
So he said, Massa, if you don't stop them, they're going to be coming for the big house. It's frustrating.
On this crap. Crazy. It's unbelievable. That's why I'm stuck reading this like crazy, man. This is Israel right here.
Yeah, our people. And the crazy part about it, I know I don't mean to be one of them super brews that look at every single movie or TV show and be like, "That's us." But Rise of the Planet of the Apes, that trilogy, that was a hell of a movie because I think at the end of it, War for the Planet of the Apes, you had these big old strong apes, right? Not the apes, the gorillas, right? And the gorillas had assimilated themselves unto, of all things, Alpha and Omega. So, real quick, I'm gonna explain this quickly because it's not like the main point of my lesson. Basically, after a great virus had wiped up most of the population, most of the human race, there was a militia that had risen up called Alpha and Omega, which are Greek symbols, right? And they went against these newly found, newly educated, self-sufficient apes and waged war against them simply because they hated them because they were able to survive. And while the Edomites were declining, the apes were increasing. So they just hated them just because they hated them. And Caesar, which was the ruler of the apes, had constantly offered them peace in many aspects. But one of the crazy parts about it was every time the Edomites, the Greeks, this Alpha and Omega, every time they made big strides against the apes, it was because of apes selling them out. And the gorillas would walk around with the Alpha and Omega branded on them like slaves, and they had to get somewhere cut into their fur donkey because all they were was just to carry stuff around. And it was like, damn, like that's our story. You got the sellouts that's going to assimilate themselves. Those are the ones that are coming to the king. We did everything that your father told us. I got the brand. I'm out here. I got the words carved in my fur and all this other kind of stuff. I'm telling you where they at. I'm giving up the tactics. Why can't you stop them? It's crazy because most of the time can't nobody stop Israel but Israel. That's the reality. Whether it's because we're disobedient to the commandments of the law and we're our own worst enemies, or because some of us are obedient and some of us are evil, and those that are evil join themselves unto the heathen, the only people that could ever really phase Israel is Israel. We're our own worst enemy one way or another. And that keeps being reiterated and re-showed throughout these scriptures because so many of the men that could have been fighting in the battles against these empires, speaking against these kings, motivating and protecting their people, were the same ones to come against their people, giving up tactics, giving up locations, giving the heathen some kind of advantageous position or information as opposed to fighting and dying with their people. And think about how much faster or how much better off we could have been if we didn't have all these traitors. A lot of fake friends. Where we at?
27. They will do greater things than these. Neither shalt thou be able to rule them.
So he said you're not going to be able to control them pretty soon. Read on.
Now when the king heard this, he was angry and gathered together all his friends and the captains of his army and those that had charge of the horse. There came also unto him from other kingdoms and from isles of the sea bands of hired soldiers, so that the number of his army was 100,000 footmen and 20,000 horsemen and 32 elephants exercised in battle.
My God, this was a massive army. 100,000 men on foot, 20,000 horsemen. That includes 20,000 horses. That's a lot. And this man steps it up with 230 elephants, which are also trained in battle. War elephants. That's a humongous army. Massive.
32.
Huh?
2 and 30.
2 and 30. I'm sorry, 32 elephants. But I mean, an elephant is huge.
Still.
That's still a lot of
like
elephants.
tanks back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tank, and it's a moving, thinking tank. So obviously, elephants can be hostile and will defend themselves. Imagine how much more if you were to strap some armor on it and send it amongst some men, how much damage it would do. Quite a few elephants, quite a few men. Drop down to verse 39, just to show the scale of how massive this army was that was coming against Israel.
39. Now when the sun shone upon the shields of gold and brass, the mountains glister therewith and shine like lamps of fire.
So just from the shields that every man was holding, when the sun beamed off them, it said it looked like the mountains was all on fire, because that's how many people were out there. That's a massive army. That's one of them fight or flight times. Time to see what you made of. Drop down to 42.
Verse 42. Then Judas and his host drew near and entered into battle. And there were slain of the king's army 600 men.
So we was up 600. Go ahead.
Eleazar also, surnamed Savaram, perceiving that one of the beasts armed with royal harness was higher than all the rest, and supposing that the king was upon him, put himself in jeopardy to the end he might deliver his people and get him a perpetual name.
So he was looking to get himself a name. He was like, all right, but he's in battle already. He sees like, man, I might be able to take down the king, and I know I'm going to be known for this. That's when it's like, okay, that's reasonable to say I want to give myself a name. Not just go out, I want to be known, but he like, I know they'll tell my story, but I got to do this for Israel. So what'd he do?
Wherefore he ran upon him courageously through the midst of the battle, slain on the right hand and on the left, so that they were divided from him on both sides.
So he was running through, bow, bow. He split the way that he was running. He split the army. He cleared himself a path. Go ahead.
Which done, he crept under the elephant and thrust him under and slew him. Whereupon the elephant fell down upon him, and there he died.
So that's the kind of man that we're rolling with Judas. That's the kind of man that were raised up in Israel on account of, or for the sake of, coming against the heathen, rescuing their people, being a captain unto their people. So he killed the elephant found upon him, and he died. I just wanted to bring that part out because it was like, man, that's a valiant act. Sometimes, you know, you see in these shows and these movies, and, you know, it's almost like commonplace, but you have to realize the severity and the gravity of being so dedicated to a cause that you're willing to die, or that you're so dedicated to it that you needed to go forth even if you don't get to see it. Most people, if you tell them right now, like, man, I'm gonna give you 10 billion, you like, damn, what I gotta do? They're like, you gotta die. Like, what? I don't want to do that because then I don't get to enjoy the 10 billion. Most people aren't willing to make that sacrifice. But he's saying, I don't even know if this is going to be for sure the end of it, but I think that the king is over there. This one looks different from all the rest of them. It's got to represent something. So he went and he made that sacrifice. Did it for his people. Greater love have no man than a man that dies for his friends. Some valiant brothers, man. I just wanted to bring that one highlight out. Where we at? 5. This is 6 and 46. Skip over to chapter. Chapter 9. Started verse 4.
First Maccabees 9, verse 4. From whence they removed and went to Berea with 20,000 footmen and 2,000 horsemen. Now Judas had pitched his tents at Elasa, and 3,000 chosen men with him, who, seeing the multitude of the other army to be so great, were sore afraid.
So they were going up against, what is that, 20,000 footmen, 2,000 horse. So 22,000 versus 2,000. What is that, 11 to 1 odds this time. It was like, damn, like, I know we did it. But this is a lot. So what happened?
Whereupon many conveyed themselves out of the host, insomuch as they abode of them no more but 800 men.
So 1,200 of those 2,000 got so scared that they decided to leave their fellow man behind, and they left their brothers on the battlefield. But did that mean that Judas packed it up too, and he let Israel get destroyed? Go ahead.
When Judas therefore saw that his host slipped away, and that the battle pressed upon him, he was sore troubled in mind, and much distressed, for that he had no time to gather them together.
I said, damn, they ran off on me again. He said, I don't have no time this time. Go ahead.
It was more, actually. It was 3,000. It was 3,000, so
3,000
more, actually more, man, yeah.
Oh, okay, actually, yeah. I'm sorry, it was 3,000 and 22,000, so that leaves, what is that, 2,400 men that left him. Damn, that's a lot of men. You like, you come out here, you all ready for war. You think these men have been trained up and everyone's willing to fight. No one's willing to die. Everyone was cool when they had 3,000 or 2,999 people around them. They're like, man, we finna do some damage. we in here. We Israel, Judah, they all strong. And when they saw the odds, they was like, ooh, that's quite a bit of selfishness to leave your people, the fate of your wives or your wife, your children, and your brethren. Just leave and say, okay, I can at least preserve my own life. But he that shall lose his life shall find it. He that shall find his life shall lose it. Read on.
And much distress, for that he had no time to gather them together. Nevertheless, unto them that remain, he said, let us arise and go up against our enemies, if peradventure we may be able to fight with them.
So with that 800 versus that 22,000, he said, look, we all we got, but we all we need. We still got to do this. Go ahead.
But they dehorted him, saying,
So as they try to convince him otherwise. Go ahead.
we shall never be able. Let us now rather save our lives, and hereafter we will return with our brethren and fight against them, for we are but few.
So they're like, nah, man, we got to go. There's no way we're going to win this. Go ahead.
Then Judah said, God forbid that I should do this thing, and flee away from them. If our time be come, let us die manfully for our brethren, and let us not stain our honor. That was G right there.
Judas was like, nah, man, hell no, we not leaving. Said if our time has come, if this is it, then one last hoorah. We still got to go out there. Even if we just slow them down, it's time. That's the thing. It's like, man, so many of our people, let me see how much time before I get too deep into that. But, so many people are so dedicated and so focused, or seemingly to be so, up until it really comes down to the time. When there was 3,000 of them, 2,400 of them left. Huge amount of his army left, and he was like, man, ain't no way I'm turning around. If y'all with me, then let's go. If we live, and you never know, the Most High could do it. But he said, if we die, we got to do this for our nation. And so, drop down to 17.
Whereupon there was a sore battle, insomuch as many were slain on both parts.
So they still did some damage, even with the little 800. And that's why I said earlier, imagine if all of our people were on the same page and dedicated. If there weren't so many traitors, if there weren't so many that had left and abandoned their brethren, Judas, more than likely, there's a very strong possibility he would have won that. We got to have more of a herd mentality than what we have now, and more of either we all succeed or we all fail, because that's the reality of a nation. Either we're going to rise together or we're going to fall together. So the acts of every individual are influential on the nation as a whole. From Judas refusing to sacrifice and starting these wars, being the captain, or Mattathias, to the sellouts that actually did go against Israel. Everybody's actions are influential. You never know who you're going to be raising, or who is in your household coming forth out of your loins, or who you came from. Read on, verse 18.
Judas also was killed, and the remnant fled.
So Judas actually fell. He died in that battle. So, but it just goes to show he was serious. He didn't say once the battle got hot and hectic and he saw it was like, okay, there go 700. Now we down to 6. Now we down to 5. Judas fought until there was no fight left in him. He died there. Like, man, that's the dedication and faith, and that's what I'm talking about. Just put it that way. That's what it takes, man. And that's very valiant. That's why this man's name is written in this book. That's why he's still immortalized and still talked about to this day. And righteousness got himself a name. That when it really came down to it, he didn't say, let's do this because we're going to get written down in history books. 800 versus 22,000, that's unprecedented. He said, man, nah, let's do this for our brethren, for our nation, for the love of our kinsmen. That's the kind of men that these were. Down at 25.
First Maccabees 9, verse 25. Then Bacchides chose the wicked men and made them lords of the country. And they made inquiry and search for Judah's friends, and brought them unto Bacchides, who took vengeance of them and used them despitefully.
So once Judas had died, of course, he said he chose wicked men. So that once again, there go the traitors. Oh, I remember, so-and-so up the street used to hang out with Judas. Him over here, I remember seeing, he was going to a meeting. They pointed him out, And it said, he said, okay, bring him unto me. And then obviously they tortured him, killed him, embarrassed him, whatever it was that they did to him. Go ahead.
So was there a great affliction in Israel, the like whereof was not since the time that a prophet was not seen among them.
That also just goes to show the kind of treatment and tribulation that the children of Israel were under with and without the Maccabees. So it's like even with all the fighting that they did and with all the battles that they won, it was getting bad without them. And even more so, it's like this is what was going on during that time frame without having a captain or without having those men to have fought for us. Israel, we was going through it. The world was in quite a bit of wickedness. Read down to 31.
For this cause all Judah's friends came together and said unto Jonathan, Since thy brother Judas died, we have no man like him to go forth against our enemies, and Bacchides, and against them of our nation that are adversaries to us. Now therefore we have chosen thee this day to be our prince and captain in his stead, that thou mayest fight our battles.
So they came unto Jonathan. They was like, look, your brother has been killed. We really don't have much of a choice. They're like, we need somebody to rally the people again. You got the name. You got that Maccabee. That means something. We need you. Go ahead. You got a point?
No.
Okay.
Upon this, Jonathan took the governance upon him at that time and rose up instead of his brother Judas.
So Jonathan rise up instead of Judas. Jonathan chose to take on take the helm, so to speak. So it continues on. It talks about the works of Jonathan, the battles that he did, the new, I can say, not necessarily a new introduction to warfare, but the tactics in which he employed with his men. Drop down to 54.
Verse 54. Moreover, in the 153rd year, in the 2nd month, Alcimus commanded that the wall of the inner court of the sanctuary should be pulled down. He pulled down also the works of the prophets. And as he began to pull down, even at that time was Alcimus plagued, and his enterprises hindered. For his mouth was stopped, and he was taken with a palsy, so that he could no more speak anything nor give order concerning his house.
All praises. So this wicked alchemist who was mentioned previously, he was desirous to be high priest. So I think that was his main incentive in coming against the Maccabees, coming against his people, period. He just wanted a position of power, and he didn't care who he had to kill, step on, betray, including and especially his own brethren, in order to attain that position of power. So it finally came down to it to where he was taken with a plague. He couldn't move his mouth. He couldn't speak anymore, and he ended up dying. Read on, finish that 58.
So Alchemist died at that time with great torment. Now when Bacchides saw that Alchemist was dead, he returned to the king, whereupon the land of Judea was in rest 2 years. Then all the ungodly men...
That's all I need. Well, actually finish that up, because all the ungodly men, here they come again.
Then all the ungodly men held a council, saying, Behold, Jonathan and his company are at ease, and dwell without care. Now therefore, we will bring Bacchides hither. Who shall take them all in one night?
So Jonathan took up the fight next. Each one of them took up the fight. Go ahead. Let's skip over to 1 Maccabees chapter 12. We're going to start at verse 42. So Jonathan then started fighting. Jonathan took up the fight. He had his battles. He had his victories. He had his portion of the war that he fought. And then eventually Jonathan was kidnapped. And he was killed. He was betrayed. He was deceived. Go ahead, 12 and 42.
1 Maccabees 12, verse 42. Now when Tryphon saw that Jonathan came with so great a force, he durst not strength his hand against him. Stretch his hand against him. Salah.
I always say this this is like my own personal thing. I say if heathen, especially Esau, if Esau can't outfight you, they'll try to outpolitic you. So he was like, damn, he came with a lot of people. I think it was like 40,000 40,000 men. Right above that it says he came, I believe, with 40,000. It was like, man, he said, I dare not try to sit up here and fight him head on. I know I'm not going to win that battle. So what did he do?
but received him honorably, and commended him unto all his friends, and gave him gifts, and commanded his men of war to be as obedient unto him as to himself.
So he was bragging to his friends, man, this is my boy Jonathan. Gave him gifts, said, my soldiers are your soldiers. He deceived him. Gave him a gift. A gift. What is it? A gift maketh the wise man mad? No, that's a present maketh the wise man mad. What is it? A gift corrupted the heart. There it is. So basically, he was trying to give Jonathan.
Destroys the heart.
There it is. A gift destroyeth the heart. Kind of the water. So he gave Jonathan these gifts, trying to make it seem like they was all cool, and what ended up happening.
Unto Jonathan also he said, why hast thou put all this people to so great trouble, seeing that there is no war betwixt us?
He's like, man, what's the problem? I don't know why you came with all these people, man. Just, hey, look. He said, I don't know why you got all your men out here. It's probably hot. They tired. They want to go back home. Send your men home. We just talk as buddies. Look here, look. Take this, man. I got these. I just had my tailor whip this up. You gonna love this new girdle. He deceived him. Drop down to verse 48.
Therefore, Salakia 48. Now as soon as Jonathan entered into Ptolemaeus, they of Ptolemaeus shut the gates and took him, and all them that came with him they slew with the sword.
So Jonathan was deceived, ended up trusting him, and it said as soon as he was coming into the city, as soon as he got past the gates, boom, scary movie style, they slammed the door on him, they closed in on him, and they killed him and everybody that came in with him, because he ended up sending a majority of his army home. Read on.
Then sent Tryphon and host of footmen and horsemen into Galilee, and into the great plain, to destroy all of Jonathan's company. But when they knew that Jonathan and they that were with him were taken and slain, they encouraged one another, and when close together, prepared to fight.
So, inspired by their acts, they decided, they was like, you know what? We know that Jonathan's dead, but we're going to still continue on this fight. So like I said, the bravery of few men can be a monument unto many. Drop down to 1 Maccabees 13, start at verse 1.
Now when Simon heard that Tryphon had gathered together a great host to invade the land of Judea and destroy it, and saw that the people was in great trembling and fear, he went up to Jerusalem and gathered the people together, and gave them exhortation, saying, Ye yourselves know what great things I and my brethren and my father's house have done for the laws and the sanctuary, and the battles also and troubles which we have seen. By reason wherefore all my brethren are slain for Israel's sake, and I am left alone.
He said, man, I lost everybody to this. But what did he do?
Now therefore, be it far from me that I should spare mine own life, if in any time of trouble, for I am no better than my brethren.
Damn it, Simon. He said, y'all see what we've done. Y'all see how much we've been through. He said, I've lost all my brothers. One after another, they had to pick up the fight for the sake of Israel, and they ended up dying. He said, but there's no way that after going through all this, how my family had, how much work we put in, that I'm just going to try to save my own life. He said, I'm no better than my brethren. So then Simon took up the fight. So, man, it's like, man, is some great men in Israel. Hell of a man to sit up here and do that. Most people, you lose everybody like that. The crazy part about it, the pressure gets put on a lot of people. They crack, they fold. They're like, man, I'm done. How much more do I have to sacrifice? Simon said, man, I done sacrificed it all already. Ain't no way I'm going to keep myself after all this. I said, man, it's my turn. Drop down to 15. Read verse 6.
Verse 6. Doubtless I will avenge my nation.
So y'all know I got y'all. Go ahead.
And the sanctuary, and our wives and our children, for all the heathen are gathered to destroy us of very malice.
He said, y'all know y'all know I got y'all. Say there's no way. Don't better believe it. Don't have no fear, man. Indubitably, I can't think of a more layman way of saying indubitably. That's basically to have no doubt. Trying to think of something.
You did it,
All right, indubitably. He said, indubitably, I'm going to fight for my people. Drop down to 15.
Verse 15. Whereas we have Jonathan, thy brother, in hold, it is for money that he is owing unto the king's treasure, concerning the business that was committed unto him.
So one of the things that they tried to do once Jonathan was already killed, they were like, nah, we have Jonathan. He was thrown in prison for a debt. Go ahead.
Wherefore now send an 100 talents of silver and 2 of his sons for hostages, that when he is at liberty, he may not revolt from us, and he will let him go, and we will let him go. Whereupon Simon, albeit he perceived that they spake deceitfully unto him, yet send he the money and the children, lest peradventure he should procure to himself great hatred of the people.
So he already knew. He was like, man, I already know that they sitting up here lying. And I know that they obviously don't have Jonathan. We know that Jonathan is dead. But he said, you know what? If I don't do this, the people are going to believe that he's dead because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And they're going to hate me. That's going to tarnish the name. So what do you do?
Who might have said, because I sent him not the money and the children thereof, is Jonathan dead. So he sent them the children and the 100 talents, howbeit Tryphon dissembled. Neither would he let Jonathan go, and after his name, and after this came Tryphon to invade the land and destroy it, going around by the way that leadeth unto Adorah. But
so he ended up killing. Jonathan. So Jonathan ended up dying, but Simon still sent the ransom because he wanted to be sure that he wasn't responsible. Jump over to 1 Maccabees 16, verse 2.
1 Maccabees 16 and 2. Wherefore Simon called his 2 eldest sons, Judas and John, and said unto them, I and my brethren and my father's house have ever from our youth unto this day fought against the enemies of Israel, and things have prospered so well in our hands that we have delivered Israel oftentimes.
So he's teaching his son his history, okay? Go ahead.
But now I am old, and ye, by God's mercy, are of a sufficient age. Be ye instead of me and my brother, and go and fight for our nation, and the help from heaven be with you.
So he was telling his sons, he said, man, we've done a lot in my lifetime, but he said, I'm getting too old for this. But now, he that teacheth his sons grieveth the enemy. Y'all are going to have to pick up the battle of your fathers, the same way I pick up the battle of my fathers. So this is the third generation of Maccabees, and he's teaching them, look, y'all got to continue on what we started, what your grandfather and my father started. Drop down to 15.
Wherefore the son of Ababas received them deceitfully into a little hole called Duckus, which he had built, made them a great banquet, howbeit he had hit men there.
So when he speaketh fair, believe it or not. Go ahead.
So when Simon and his sons had drunk largely, Ptolemy and his men rose up and took their weapons and came upon Simon into the banqueting place and slew him, and his 2 sons and certain of his servants, in which doing he committed a great treachery and recompensed evil for good.
So that was the end of that particular family. That was the end of Simon and his 2 sons that were with him. They were deceived, and when they got comfortable, when they was eating and they was drinking, they having a good time, the men that were in the hall ran upon him and they killed him. We do have, like I said, this is going to be an abridged version, and the scriptures themselves already say that they were abridged. I would recommend you go and read 1st and 2nd Maccabees on your own, research the Hasmonean Dynasty, because even with what, regardless of the time, you really can't do this history justice. You have any points you wanted to bring out?
No, I think you brought it up as far as when Herod comes into the picture, the Romans and all that, with his sons that were left, or the lineage that was left. Remember, that's pretty much how Herod ended up having that title. It was, somewhat influential in the land of Israel. but it wasn't by lineage. It was by marrying one of the Hasmonean, Miriam, one of the Hasmonean daughters.
Which he ended up betraying anyway. So, with that being said, that's going to conclude tonight's lesson. With that, I say shalom. We good, Nash? Nash, we good?
My bad. Yeah, we good.